Eric, Shiyu, how you doing?
Hey, David.
All right, we are going to get started very shortly here, but I do have a couple things to do before we get started. So I'll wait for everyone to keep joining in. If you are new, please put up your hand and I'll invite you up to stage, where we can invite you to talk with us and join in on the conversation. I'm just setting up the live stream currently right now, so just give me a second and we'll get started very shortly. There we go. Okay, I'm going to start inviting everyone up to stage. Today we are streaming on using Livepeer Studio's multi-stream feature. We're going to be streaming on YouTube as well as Xenon.xyz. So Xenon is a great decentralized protocol for streaming, and I'm glad to support them. So if you're watching this on YouTube, thanks for joining us. And if you're watching on Xenon, that's very, very cool too. I'll just start inviting everyone up to stage as we get started. We'll probably get started in the next minute here. We do have a guest speaker today, which I'll get into shortly. And yeah, we'll go from there. So we'll get started in 1 minute. There we are. Cool. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Is my audio fine? Can I do a quick audio check? Can people hear me?
Yeah, you sound great.
Perfect. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's water cooler chat, where we talk about all things Livepeer, whether it's orchestrating, delegating, broadcasting, or developing. These are the places to get some answers to your questions and join in on the conversation. So today we have a bit of an agenda ahead of us, which I'm very excited about. First, we're going to be doing, obviously, our introductions. Then we'll be doing a Q&A with Shiyu, who is a core developer with Livepeer. And I'll let him introduce himself during the Q&A session. And then we'll follow along with all the topics that we'd like to cover for questions. So please bring your questions. Please bring your expertise. And let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, we are streaming on YouTube and Xenon.xyz through the Livepeer Studio app. So we are doing a multi-stream and yeah, checking it out for the first time here. So very excited for that. Let's go ahead and start with introductions and we'll get started. So I'll start with introducing myself. I'm Titan, been running the Titan node Orchestrator since April of 2021. And today my topic is going to be about the too many file open requests on Linux nodes. This has been a recent error that has popped up, and I opened a GitHub issue for it. So just would like to talk a little bit about that and node uptime as well. So yeah, that's my topic for today. Let's move on to Pon. Would you like to introduce yourself and a topic?
Evening everyone, I'm Pon. I've been running Pon node Orchestrator for about 6 months now, maybe a bit more. My topic for tonight would be people running multiple orchestrators. So not running like one or two, but a bunch of them.
Multiple orchestrators, yeah, very good. Great topic, and great to have you, Pon. Thank you so much for joining us. Jason, would you like to introduce yourself and a topic?
Hi everyone, I'm Jason. I'm running average node for like almost more than a year now. Topic for me is like well, it's not really a big topic to discuss, but it's more about the errors. I've been noticing, like, I don't know if it's just me, like the uh the bits, what is it called? I forgot the word. uh Low bit error. Yeah. It's like really frequent. I was wondering if it's like, is it something, could we do like maybe some update to the software from like Orchestrator side, or does it have to do with like the FFmpeg, I think the library itself? So just wondering about that.
Very cool. And that's the low bit rate profile. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, great. Yeah, I'm glad to. I'm excited to hear if anyone has any insight on that. So very good. Thank you for joining us, Jason. Papa Bear, would you like to introduce yourself on a topic?
Sure, I am Papa Bear running Solar Farm. It's been running since July of last year. And well, you kind of stole my topic. I was curious about the too many files opened error that it hit one of my nodes, and it hit it once, and it's been fine since. But I do find it really curious that it over the weekend started hitting a bunch of nodes, and it just I don't think anyone here has an answer to what it is, but I just want to know what we can do to try and get that fixed and solved, because I don't sleep as well at night knowing that one of my machines could go down. So that, and then I've got questions for Shiu when we get to that. So thanks for having me.
Very cool. Thank you for joining us, Papa Bear. Frank with Ultima Ratio, would you like to introduce yourself and a topic?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Frank. I'm running with Sienna the Ultima Ratio node since May 21, and I'm joining you about your topics about the error of the open file, and maybe we can add the other error we have since a few weeks, like error processing payment, a lot of them, and orchestrator busy, etc. Tons of them also.
Right, great. So I got too many files open, error processing payment, and
yeah, orchestrator busy, etc. There is a lot of them, and it's not fixed
yeah,
yet.
The orchestrator busy one is frustrating too, because I don't know what how to fix that one. So very good topic. So I'm excited to get into. Today's going to be like a bug.
I believe those two are that Frank's the too many the orchestrator busy and the low bit rate are tied together. So when we get into that, I'll tell you what I've noticed about that, but I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
Very cool. Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining us, Frank. John, would you like to introduce yourself on a topic?
Hey, this is John with Elite Encoder. I've been operating an Orchestrator since around this time last year, October. We just onboarded a European node, so it's been an exciting update this week. I don't really have, I guess, a couple topics I can think of along the lines of what we've been talking about. Sometimes I notice, like, if there's an issue with an Arbitrum node or RPC at any level, like I would see streams drop or not get as many streams, but there seems to be no errors in the logs pointing to that in many cases. So I thought that might be an interesting thing to talk about when it comes to logging. And then if anyone's had any experience compiling Livepeer with the NetInt FFmpeg build, I'd be interested in connecting after a while on your experience with that.
Very cool.
That's all I've got today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, John. Shiu, I'll skip you for now because we'll get around to your introduction for the Q&A session, which will be just after this. So I'll move on to Eric. Eric, would you like to introduce yourself on a topic?
Sure. Hey, everybody. I'm Eric, a core contributor with Livepeer and the community manager here. I don't have a specific topic, but I would like to highlight that on Wednesday at 11:30 EST, we are doing an Orchestrator Spotlight on Papa Bear. It will be hosted on Twitter Spaces, and you can find the information in the events section here in Discord, but I'll be sure to be sending reminders over the next couple of days. So anybody who wants to tune in and learn more about Papa Bear, should be an exciting event.
Oh, I can't wait. Can't wait to join. That sounds amazing. Thank you so much, Eric. And what a great initiative. Sounds great. Thank you for joining us. Dora Sun. Dora, I don't believe we've met. Hello, welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself and a topic or question you might have?
Sure, of course. Thank you so much for hosting Tylenode. I recently joined the Livepeer team under the ecosystem team, so really excited. So I'll be growing the ecosystem under Shannon. But I'll be working probably a lot with Eric, who's running the community. Just really looking forward to meeting everybody, learning. So I don't have a topic to discuss, more just listening in and just hearing what everyone's been up to and how you're involved in the Livepeer ecosystem.
Very cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and pleasure to meet you. Vires, would you like to introduce yourself and a topic?
Hey all, I'm Vires. I've been running an Orchestrator since 3.5 years now. Same topic as everybody else, like the too many open files one. And apart from that, just glad to finally be able to make the call again.
Very good. Great to have you back. And hopefully you're done your rock climbing just for a little bit so you can continue joining these calls. So great to have you. We got next Philippe. Philippe, would you like to introduce yourself and a topic? No worries. I'm not sure if your mic's not working or if you're just AFK, which is totally fine. MaxComputing, would you like to introduce yourself and a topic or question you might have?
Hello. Thanks for inviting me. I'm a little new in the Livepeer stuff since a few days, but I did some during 2 months. I did some tries on Livepeer, and I'm new.
Very cool. No worries. Well, if you want to jump in on the conversation, feel free to join us. And like I said, welcome to the community. Great to have you join us.
Thank you very much.
Very cool. Okay, so we've gone through introductions. Let's hop right into our Q&A session with Shiyu. Shiyu, are you with us?
I'm here.
Very good. Just to confirm, that is how you say your name. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. Exactly.
Very cool. All right, Shiyu, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and your role with Livepeer?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. My name is Shiyu, and I work as part of more with the Livepeer studio side, so the engineering team on that. I have multiple, I guess, hats I wear. I do support that comes in either from the website or Discord or hackathons in terms of how to help developers use Studio anytime we have any new features coming out or any known issues that we haven't fixed and then we're just trying to update the docs but hasn't made it there yet. I'm also helping test new features that comes out we're working on and getting feedback from the team as well as like the collaborators that we work with and that's building applications with Livepeer Studio. So if we have something we want them to kind of beta test for us because they're asking for a specific feature that we're able to come up with and getting feedback and how to fine tune things as well as I help the marketing team as well. Just overall in general, whatever I can do to help facilitate it, I try my best.
Very cool. What I'll do is I'll start off with some pretty broad topics, and then what I'll do is we'll open it up for Q&A and we'll dive into more deep discussion with some more specifics. So just before we get started, how did you first hear about Livepeer?
My first, I guess, encounter was actually through a hackathon, one of the ETH global hackathons a couple of years ago. So a lot has changed then. I mean, just looking at the project I built using Livepeer to what you're able to do now, it's a lot. So that's kind of like my first introduction to Livepeer.
And when was that hackathon?
It was a couple of years ago. I think it's like 2 years ago. It was like one of the ETH online, the ETH Global put up. And I've seen actually that's like me using it. I've actually heard about it before than just watching like the other hackathons. I think it was like during the pandemic that the sponsors and Eric doing talks on it. So yeah, I find it very fascinating.
Very cool. And one last question before we get open to the discussion here. What is the biggest thing you're currently working on?
The biggest thing, I guess support is always the biggest thing, but in terms of like a new feature, we just kind of rolled out with having an SDK for Livepeer Studio, which makes it a lot easier for any developer to kind of just, create and adapt that utilizes either live streaming or VODs, where they don't have to constantly make calls to the different endpoints of the API. I built a little sample application demonstrating the differences of the API versus the SDK, and so that's kind of the I think the biggest thing because we're kind of putting a lot of features into the SDK now, as to the API endpoints which still exist, but we're kind of promoting that because it allows developers to actually create something a lot quicker and start streaming.
Very cool. Okay, what I'd like to do is open it up for some questions. Does anyone in the community have any questions for Shiyu? I know Papa Bear, you said you had a few.
Yeah, sure. I was curious to know what is there like a group of or type of users that you notice are like who's using the are you finding is using the studio most often? Like what type of users? What are their either backgrounds or what type of content or
Yeah,
is there
that's
any
a
kind of
great
pattern?
question. So it's quite a few. A good majority we have is because we are very active in hackathons. So we'll have hackathon members, and that kind of ranges. I noticed that during like the online hackathon events, we will have more of the intermediate to beginner developers who, a lot of the questions not necessarily related to Livepeer, but just how to use, like React, how to build a project or, JavaScript. So it's more code based. Then we have more of, the intermediate advanced as well, but they kind of know their way around, so they have more like specific questions. And those are the ones that we usually get that would have reports of certain things that aren't either working the way it's supposed to, like small bugs that we're able just to fix, or certain things that's not as intuitive in a way. So we'll take those feedback and you know talk to the team and how can we you know make it more user friendly, more intuitive. So those are kind of the ones. And then there are still like the not as many, but we do have quite a handful of them that are the very advanced users who know video technology. That's kind of like the biggest thing is that most developers that encounter have very little or no video experience in terms of that. So that's kind of one of the challenging things we try to do is to make sure to educate them about that. So for a perfect example is, and for a while it was like, the HLS playback in the video, everyone for the most part thinks of just putting it into the web browser and it works. And we had to kind of explain you need your own video player, or you could use, Bitmoven's test player, or if you're in the Safari browser, it's natively supported. But we actually implemented, a player now in the SDK where people could just use the player and plug in the URL and they're good to go. So it kind of clears up a lot of that blockage for like earlier developers. But I'm not sure if I answered your question completely, but yeah.
Yeah, no, you did, and because I've just been noticing a lot more activity around that than a few months ago even, and I think because there's so many hackathons and stuff that Livepeer's involved with it, that's probably where what's bringing them in. But yeah, I've definitely noticed just a lot more people that seem to want to be building on Livepeer, so I'm excited for that, and hopefully I'd like to see that just continue to grow. So I'm glad you're here to help them out. I'll let
Yeah,
someone else ask a question, but
yeah, no, I definitely noticed that in support too. We have been getting more and more questions, and it's great because sometimes we'll just get general inquiries, and not as like a lot, but a little more than usual is more and more of like more mature organizations that are looking into Livepeer and switching over, but they're not sure yet, and because of the cost effective, how more effective it is like savings wise because of the transcoding minutes it costs. So we're getting more and more questions about just Livepeer because yeah, we constantly have talks with either on mostly we're kind of focusing on the Web3 realm, but we still have like kind of like Web2 organizations that are kind of looking into Web3 just to kind of see what it's like. So yeah.
So just to make sure I understood, so you were saying there are people that are using video currently, and they're looking at Livepeer as a alternative for cost savings. Is that does I understand that
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Okay.
And they're
Yeah,
inquiring about like what are the features Studio has and why is it so cheap?
because you got all these great orchestrators there supporting the network.
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
So, out of all the value propositions that Livepeer Studio provides, would you say that saving money or reducing costs is the greatest factor of people coming to the platform, or is it decentralization and all these other things? Like, what would you say is the biggest reason for people coming?
Um, I don't think there's one. I would say if you look at like the hackathons where it seems like, this past year because of the Lens protocol, like social media is um is like sort of like the new trend, right? Whereas the year before was I think NFT, and then the year before was like DeFi. So I think more and more people are thinking about what other, applications they could bring in from the Web 2 to decentralize, for I guess the greater good. And because of like the Lens protocol launch, that I think there's more tractions in terms of like video versus just like images. So for like people just trying to get either their feet wet and developing in Web3 or just switching over, I think the that aspect of like the centralized social, platforms is very appealing. I know for like more of like the mature businesses on the Web2 side that I've talked to and encountered, they do think about the price because it saves them so much more money that way when they factor it, when they're thinking about X amount of minutes, right? Or if they only have like 4 streams, but they're going 24/7. So those are things they're kind of looking into. Some of the hurdles they have is like convincing their peers or other people in the company to jump on board. But for those group of people, I would say it would be like the cost.
Well, as for cost, and I don't know how other platforms do this as for cost, but I know that Livepeer is your pricing per pixel, so you're basically you're only paying for exactly what you use. Is that common amongst other industries? Like if you go to Amazon, are you paying per pixel or per minute, or are you paying for the machine, like one GPU, and it can do 20 streams whether you use them or not? Like, is the pricing kind of structured different than traditional businesses, or is it the same?
It's different in the sense of I don't know about the exact like pixels amount of like if Amazon does that or other services, but the encounter I have when a couple of people asked about Agora because they use that to stream is that um, some of these companies they actually round up your bit rate. So they kind of see like what your bit rate is, and if it goes above like, oh, well, he's using 720 and some 360, but if we average it, it's kind of like 1080. They'll kind of price it that way. So they kind of round up to the next highest tier for the bit rates, and then that price is what they'll charge. Whereas for Livepeer Studios, we don't charge by you know that at all. It's like a flat. It doesn't matter what your resolution is. We just charge per minute. So that's what, you know, is some of the appeal for people who are concerned about like the different prices for the different because, some companies they stream, but they're in, more of underdeveloped countries, so they don't want high resolutions. They want low because their users' network can't handle that capacity. So they're like, hey, do you support very low resolutions? And what is that price? Because they want the different even though it's low resolution, still some sort of, choices for the players, right? If, like they're on mobile or they're watching at their house. So that's one of the I guess the factors for pricing wise, and that differentiates Livepeer from the other companies.
Titan, if you want, I can expand. I just happened to look into AWS pricing in the last couple of days because Zuper's been doing a bunch of testing with broadcasting, and we were just kind of trying to compare what the actual cost has been just running a broadcaster versus like I just picked AWS, just thinking they're one of the the big players in it, and they charge per minute, and then by resolution they kind of have buckets. Like if it's SD, so that's 720 and below, and then they have the HD and then 4K, and they're all different rates for different amounts. And then also they also charge by your frame rate, and it's considerably more expensive than Livepeer. So just and that's for like one pass speed optimized, which I think would be the closest to Livepeer's what Livepeer is doing. And then I don't know what they actually charge for live, because a lot of companies charge more for actually live transcoding than for on-demand stuff. But I don't know if that helps at all, or if I've just confused everything, because I'm looking at it in a spreadsheet where it's nice and easy to see it. But I'm happy to share that what I saw, or I can link to the page. I can find that.
Yeah, just link it in the water cooler chat. That's very interesting. So, right. So we know that that Amazon can be expensive. People are looking for cheaper options to save money, and so they explore with Livepeer and try and see if it's a fit. Shiyu, do you what percentage of people do you think that test out Livepeer or that are inspired to use it? How many of them do you think stick around versus kind of the drop-off rate of people that are kind of give it a try and decide not to kind of pursue a greater degree of path for Livepeer Studio?
Oh, that's hard to say because my experience mostly, the majority of it with developers are from hackathons, but so most of the time it's, they were just doing it for the project, for the hackathon, submit it. But it's like there's like a handful out of those projects every hackathon that kind of goes and develops and builds and improves upon it. So I mean, it's a small number compared to the projects that's submitted, but those are the handful that kind of like stick around and continue and try to improve. There's also a handful of projects I encountered. Like one is called Orbis, who is it's like a decentralized Twitter in a sense. They're trying to integrate Livepeer. There's another project called Piranha. They're kind of like the Stack Overflow that's decentralized, and they're looking into doing that. So like those are like the more, I guess, established projects that may not come out of a hackathon. I'm not aware of, but like has been, have a solid product and they're trying to incorporate. So I feel like I guess the good thing is coming out of like different avenues. So it's we're trying to find these people, and it's like if they come and search for help, we try to support them as much as we can. And kind of the way we do it is like sort of like co-collaborate, because they bring a lot of insights that would benefit us and the product in the long run in terms of like usability or features they would like to see. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, basically, just to paraphrase, lots of projects start, don't maybe get off the ground, or it's probably too early to check to monitor conversion rates, because it's just it's all so new. So I can see how that is an interesting challenge. Any other questions from the community?
If no one else has any,
Go ahead, Baba.
Yeah, I was just wondering how easy do you find it, like that are developers finding it to adopt and use Livepeer? Is it how different is it than what they're currently using?
So for, I guess, it depends. So the group, like, there's other already, like, if they're advanced users or like intermediate to advanced, they find it very easy. It's like the documentation, they, we're going, undergoing a development on it right now to make it better, but they, they say the documentation is very easy to follow. For the sort of like beginning to intermediate, I think they struggle, but I think it's more of the programming itself than the live peer. Um, but I'm seeing more, I guess, completion of using live peer with the SDK that came out not too long ago, because it is very simple where they just install it, and then there's literally, for certain things, there's like a few lines of code and they don't have to think much. So I think that helps encourage like the beginning to intermediate developers, where they're able to just spin up something, actually see results, and it's seeing working. So
And
I think it's
go ahead.
no, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so for existing people that are existing video users, does it tend to work in their current pipeline with minimal code changes? I mean, do they kind of just pop that in?
Using the SDK, yeah,
Right.
it's like, yeah, very simple. I tested it out, so I was like, oh, this kind of feels weird because it's a little too easy for it to work after, me going through using the API and kind of like struggling on my own, but learning. Um, so yeah, those they find it very easy. And as I mentioned before, like, the advanced developers, they just, they're fine with before the SDK. It was easy to implement because they kind of like know how to use video technology, or familiar with either like using Mux and switching over, or other, video services. So yeah.
That's good to hear. And then I have one last question, if it's okay to ask. And then, are there features that that users are requesting that like that don't exist? Are there features that people have been requesting for Livepeer?
Yes, and we are working on that. So, the ones are pretty much like the table stakes, where they're expected to have like viewership, and we are working on that, which is in the SDK right now, and it's part of like the video player, where if you use a video player, you could see people who started to view. We're trying to work out and improve upon it. Right now, we're able to kind of track people who just, when you get a started view of, like, I think like if they watched it for more than, I think it was like 10 seconds, then it counts it as a view. So, but just like starting views, we're not trying to mislead, like that's actually how many views. So people kind of started it. We want to iterate upon it to be more accurate. And, I know there's talks of it at some point where we want the users or the developers to kind of like dictate what constitute as a view. Whereas right now, like if people go to YouTube or Twitch, when they see like a viewing, it's like the algorithm is dictated by, YouTube or Twitch, right? Of what constitutes a views. But there's talks of like some point maybe we can let the developers kind of decide that. Another feature we're trying to work on too is thumbnails. So when people upload a video, there's no thumbnails right now. So that's the kind of thing we want to implement. And, other things for like live streaming is like, the clipping at some point, so people are able to clip videos. Also, where, when someone jumps into a live stream, where if they miss, the last like, maybe 30 seconds, for them to kind of go back, or if they jumped in, they could see that because they showed up late. So there's a lot of things that
Okay.
kind of like are kind of standard. We're trying to do that because people expect that.
Yeah, those are actually all makes yeah, I could see how those would be things that people would want. Yeah, I was curious just to know like what kind of stuff is missing from there, and thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Shiyu, you said you spend time basically with Livepeer Studio customers, helping them through challenges and things. How much time do you spend on one-on-one with a customer versus like maybe just like in chat general knowledge? Like, do you spend one-on-one, even video time or talking time dealing with these people and helping them? Or how does your support look like?
Yeah, so it depends on the avenue, and there's certain, I guess, people we try to give priority more, if especially if they're using Livepeer and they're a pro account. So, the perfect example is the lot radio who streams 24/7. So we deal mostly with them through chat because they're kind of comfortable and we could chat and email. So we have like fast turnaround times for them. I guess that's kind of one-on-one because we kind of facilitate the conversations which through whichever avenue they prefer. If I get stuff that just comes in from the website, I will respond, but sometimes I hear back because a lot of the times I'll get a very general question of like, hey, my live stream isn't working. So I have to, then I just ask them a question. It's like, okay, what is your setup? What are you using for broadcasting? And then sometimes they respond, sometimes they don't. I do try to give as much, I guess, personal attention, but directing them to documentation or other discussions that exist, kind of like based on what I see and get a feel for. If they're like just trying to look for a quick answer, then I'll send them to something where like, okay, like the docs where it's it's proficient enough where they can find it because it's very clear how to use that. Or if not, and they have a lot of more questions back and forth, I'll try to like diagnose that and then see if I could do like a little short video clip on my end, like, hey, this is my setup. It's working for me. What is your setup? So I guess it's maybe the the easier way to say it, if like they're in my time zone, which is like the United States, is I guess a little more easier for one-on-ones. Um, because if it's on the other side of the world, then I'll be sleeping and I can't attend it till the next day. But I try to as much as I can, juggling along other things too that I have to do.
Dang it, you should be up all night servicing tickets one-on-one. No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that leads into kind of another question I have is how many people are on your team for doing this? And is it just you? And do you feel overwhelmed at all? Like, is there a lot of tickets that come in, or is it something that you believe you're managing quite well right now?
It's not overwhelming. So I do most of the support. I reach out to, team members and like my manager, like Victor or Jolie, you'll see them. I'll either, ask them directly or kind of like bring them into the channel depending. I kind of have like a whole like list of well-known questions or FAQs that I kind of populated and try to update as much as possible, find solutions. So I kind of do that. Other people will kind of jump into like you'll see, Eric jump in as well. They know the answers. So I think it's collaborative, but for the most part, I'm like the first line of offense, and I try to filter out a lot of the questions that are just people maybe they just misread something in the documentation or just like simple questions that I'm able to help solve. But if it's like more technical, then I will kind of diagnose that a little bit. If I feel stuck, then I'll bring it to, the team and then see what they say.
Do you find that, and like I said, I've written down like 17 questions, so I can go for a while. But I'll let other people jump in, so just interrupt when you want. Do you feel like these customers, when they're onboarding, they need convincing to use Livepeer, or do they feel pretty compelled to make it work because of, the benefits they've read of Livepeer?
Um, I think it depends because sometimes they are using Livepeer because they kind of want to see, so if they want to switch or not. I've been in a couple of calls where people are very eager and excited to use it, but for some reason they kind of just didn't incorporate it. One of the common questions to kind of ask is like, hey, have you tried out Livepeer Studios and what are your thoughts? And, if they haven't, then I send them, the documentations for a lot of things like, hey, it's very simple. This is where you go. Just sign up for an account. There's like free account for, you get 1,000 minutes per month just to experiment and then bring your feedback back to us, and see what you say. So um, it's it's kind of like tricky to kind of to to see if like people are doing it if they out of like necessity, because sometimes it does happen they make the switch and then it's like yes they're saving money, but those are maybe smaller projects. There's like talks with like bigger um companies that want to transfer over, but they want to do a lot of more like internal testings on their end as well as with us to see that it's reliable, stable enough before they actually make the switch. Especially when we just recently launched Catalyst multi-node and the new features we have out. They kind of want to test that too, so they're kind of like in the background testing as well as with Livepeer, but still using their current infrastructure.
Do you also help with Catalyst, or is it just Studio?
I know nothing about Catalyst. I try to update myself about it. I know about it and kind of how it works and what's going on because it kind of sort of intertwines with Studio. So, but in terms of like support or any of that, that's like on a much, much deeper level.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Any other questions from the community?
I might ask one real quick.
Mhm.
I've heard about the SDK before and asked this, but just for developers that are unfamiliar with the SDK, what languages is it available in?
So it's in React, and we're working on once it's done to have like a vanilla JavaScript version. We're in the talks of trying to at some point, do a version for like Vue or Svelte as well. I think Chase might have put up a quick example of one in Svelte, but we're trying to, when we can, accommodate the different ones because we want to make it as accessible to as many people as possible, right? So not everyone builds only in React.
Yeah, and I'm aware of some solutions with FFmpeg that are built on Node.js currently, so maybe some users to pick from there if we get a build on Node.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. That's all the question I had.
Oh yeah. You're welcome.
Do you does Livepeer Studio build plugins, or is it just SDKs and code for developing on? Like, is there plans for something like a WordPress plugin or one of these like Wix plugins where you can make things super easy for drag and drop people, or is it more just sticking towards the developers who can code?
It's right now for coding, there has been talks. I know there was one of the projects did a grant proposal to create a WordPress plugin. Um, but I don't know how if they got approved or what the process is of that is at the moment. But there are talks of it. There's just like it would be cool. There's like just so many different trains of thoughts, right? Like the plugins usually I think would be help the Web 2 people convert into the Web 3 using Livepeer and the ecosystem of just plug it into their site, right? But I think our main focus right now is really just trying to get the VOD really polished as a product because that came out of I guess some hackathons where people wanted to upload, and then so then we just had like from live streaming we have like two features now. Same thing with the minting SDK that we're trying to improve upon as well because it came out like a hackathon, someone requested it, and Victor just kind of did that overnight real quick, and we kind of just like referred people to it. So now our focus is trying to polish up VOD and then polish up live stream and then all the other and improve upon like the features I mentioned before, like the table stakes that people are looking for.
Is VOD more expensive? So for those that don't know, VOD is video on demand, which is uploading video. And I believe traditionally VOD has been cheaper than live streaming. Is that the case for Livepeer Studio, or is it the same price?
Yeah, so it's the same price. That's the thing. I guess the beauty of it, right? It's the same flat fee whether you're transcoding, live streaming, or on demand at whatever resolution. It doesn't matter. It's just one fixed price, I guess, if you will, for that. So yeah.
Very cool. Do you believe that, this is going to get more into, ideas and theories, but like, do you think that Livepeer Studio is a centralizing force because they are, a central company and not a decentralized protocol per se? And if they are centralized, is that a problem for Livepeer?
I don't think Livepeer is a centralized, I guess, company. I guess it depends on how you look at it, right? Like the company in itself, I think it's centralized because it's one company. But I guess the product or what we're trying to do is very accessible, not centralized, right? Like if anybody wanted to actually go and build their own live peer company, they can, and we have the tools for them to do that, right? And more accessible and easier now with, once everything's fine tuned with like Catalyst, where they have their own broadcaster, they could have their own, um, they could participate in the transcoding network if they want to, right? So I think it's not centralized in that aspect because people could build their own infrastructure. That's the whole, I guess, mission, right? There's a lot of confusion at times because people think Livepeer was like trying to be the next, Twitch or the Web3 of YouTube, the YouTube of Web3, but it's not. We're actually like the infrastructure to build all of these things, and we're trying to decentralize it more and more. Where we're working, trying to at some point allow people to actually do, use different decentralized storage solutions. And with the multi-node, we're trying to figure out how to, you know, get away from like CDNs too. So like we're trying to slowly, as the technology improves, we're trying to like slowly, but surely decentralize every aspect that we can't think of so that, people could just use this.
You talked about is Livepeer Studio open source?
Yeah.
There you go. Well, that answers a lot too, right? Because that means that anyone can come along and improve upon it, fork it, and run their own version of a studio kind of platform and let other people build on them as well.
Yeah, just like how I guess earlier this year with this server becoming open source as well. So yeah, we're trying to make everything for everyone.
Very cool. You talked about a little bit about integrations with file storage. What integrations are Livepeer Studio focusing on as for like CDNs, file storage? Are they working with Filecoin and IPFS or Media Network for these types of things, or what progress or what ideas are floating around there right now?
Yeah, so right now we have, so if you're, if you sign up for like a Livepeer Studio account, you could have the option to store using IPFS. So we integrated that into Livepeer Studio. We're trying to now look into expanding on that. Like how do we do that with, Arweave or Storage J? So to give people more options, but we're slowly doing that. We haven't had as much um I guess requests for others right now. Apparently, people are satisfied with just IPFS, but you are able to integrate with any kind if you want to, like if you're building your own application from the ground up and not, relying on Livepeer Studio in the dashboard, but if you're, making the API calls and stuff, then you could integrate with other decentralized storage. So it's up to them. We're trying to make it, I guess, more accessible in a way, just using the dashboard at some point. Um, so there's on the end of the CDN, from my understanding, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it because we just launched the multi-node. That kind of is supposed to at some point resolve the reliance on, CDN servers in specific areas where it's the nodes that kind of like share the information. So then whichever node is closer to each other, then they're able to just have that information, you know, on there, and then the user closest to those nodes could just pull that down.
So,
So,
so that's called multi-node, and that's built into Catalyst?
yeah, Catalyst multi-node. That's what we're kind of like working on. I think it just launched and we're still doing that. So like now anything when you do like when you're live streaming, you're through the multi-nodes.
So when I don't know how technical you know about this, but I'm just really curious because there's a CDN network called Media Network. They're built on Solana, and they had built actually SDKs and documents around integrating with Livepeer specifically. And so I was wondering, is Livepeer interested in really focusing on integrations with CDNs, or are they trying to fix the CDN problem internally by what you call this multi-node, where I guess the nodes would share the information with each other and then broadcast that to the end user? Is that kind of the idea?
I think that's the idea. And in terms of like integration and helping other or incorporating with other people, I think there's definitely talks of that. I'm pretty sure that the higher ups are in different kind of conversations with different companies about that, so I wouldn't know too much information about it. But I think the because like currently I think we're trying to shy away from CDNs at some point. I know in the past we haven't because it wasn't there wasn't like a decentralized solution that was like really reliable, or if there was one at all. So I know like with the uses of like this Catalyst multi-node, the idea was to like kind of alleviate that because we were using StackPath as our CDN, and then there's not as much in certain regions in the world. So we're trying to like kind of help solve that solution too.
Definitely. Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, the Papa Bear, you can go ahead.
I was going to just throw in that with Zuper, we were playing around with integrating Livepeer with Media Network, and they actually have a really good guide on their website, Media Network, on actually even setting up Livepeer. It's a little dated, but it was actually at the time when I first looked at it, I think it was better than Livepeer's documentation, and it worked really well. I mean, we didn't do any large scale testing, but I just think that's really slick, and it's decentralized, and it's a peer-to-peer content delivery network, and I think it just makes a great fit for Livepeer. So for whatever that's worth, I'm a big fan of theirs for what I've used from it, and I just like to see Livepeer working with them as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean there might be talks of that. I'm pretty sure there's people who are in the know about that. I'm just not one of them, but I don't see why that's not a possibility because we're very, open to collaboration and working with people to make everything more accessible.
And again, I'm just throwing it out. It just makes a nice fit as far as being decentralized, and that's a big part of the Web3 thing that people like I've seen people come into like the Discord and be like, Livepeer is centralized, and because they use a CDN, and so it would just it would be a nice like offering to have as not necessarily a default, but something that just was maybe a little at least maybe a note or something that, hey, here's an option for how to a way to deliver streams. And I mean, obviously you'd want to test it and see how it works at scale, but it's pretty slick.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, one question to follow up
and I
with.
have no affiliation with them, just as a disclaimer, just a fan.
Gotcha.
Just on the note, I was going to ask, like, as far as your work for Livepeer Studio and enabling new features with Livepeer Studio, do you ever find moments where you're looking to actually make changes to Livepeer itself to fully implement, that functionality, or is it a lot of it being just laid on top of Livepeer with the Studio application? So, for example, this CDN integration. It sounds like you could probably integrate that in both places, both on the Livepeer Studio side and or on just the broadcaster themselves, being able to plug into that. it would be kind of nice to see more of those functionalities built into, I think, the main Livepeer build. But just curious if there's any focus on trying to drive work towards that rather than the studio.
Oh yeah, no. So Studio works with the network side and the broadcasting now. What we call the Catalyst was like Livepeer broadcaster on top of Mist server where we kind of work together. So there's certain things that runs through the broadcaster. So talking about the CDN aspect of things that definitely would be on the broadcasting, or not the broadcasting, but like Catalyst side, on the network side. So like Studio is more of, if you think of it as like an API to allow people to kind of like create a live stream account in a session and streaming or uploading, and then a lot of like will kind of facilitate those information to like the network.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah.
Shiyu, we've been going for almost an hour. How much time do you have left? I have more questions, but of course I want to respect your time.
Oh no, I could answer.
Great, wonderful. Okay, one quick question, because we are streaming this on YouTube and Xenon.xyz, and I'm using Livepeer Studio to do a multi-stream. So it's taking the original stream from OBS, it's distributing it to different platforms, and the idea is I do want to post this on YouTube because I think a lot of people watch it there, but I also want to support other decentralized protocols that are building, like Xenon.xyz. The Studio multi-stream function, you have the choice of how you want the video to be sent to the end user, and I clicked source. So does that mean that the video getting distributed to each of these platforms is not being transcoded by Livepeer, and that it's just being sent there as the source file?
Yeah, so it's just the source file that gets pushed to whatever you want the original signal to direct to as well.
Yeah, and then so Xenon, for instance, they use Livepeer for their transcoding. So then once they receive, that broadcaster node receives that transmission, it would then get transcoded and be available on their website, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's correct. That's my understanding of it. And then like YouTube would use theirs for that.
Yeah. So what's funny is this live stream is being transcoded twice, which seems to be a common thing with Restream and multi-streams, is they send the source file and it gets, like, I think Twitter transcodes it, and then Facebook transcodes it, and then YouTube transcodes it. So some videos are getting transcoded like multiple times, which I find just interesting because it seems really ineffective. But I don't know where I was going with that. I was just kind of curious on how that worked with Studio for the source.
No, that is interesting. I never really thought about it that way, but yeah, that is. I should bring it up and see what people think.
Yeah, like, what if you sent transcoded data to these platforms already? Like, I wonder. I don't know. I just thinking off the top of my head, of course. But yeah, so do you believe that Livepeer Studio is kind of an onboard to something like Catalyst, or do you think that Livepeer Studio is meant to be the end, the final resting point for these type of dApps that will be built on top of it?
Well, I don't think of like Livepeer Studio, even though it's like it does different things that to a certain extent as like Catalyst would, or as the network for transcoding. I kind of think of them all as like, one cohesive entity that relies on each other for different things. So I think it's all necessary, and whichever, there's certain maybe small features that exist on Studio, that just exist there because you don't need it for other purposes for like like Catalyst, right? But A perfect example of how everything works together would be like a new feature, like I mentioned before, that we have starting like viewership that would say it's like start views. Well, that information kind of comes from Catalyst, where Miss server we kind of grab that information, and then we're able to display it easily on the front end side using Studio. So it's easier for people, something familiar for developers to understand, like, oh yeah, I use like this software, called Livepeer Studio, that's similar to another one that I'm allowed to, I have a player. I can plug it in and on my website, and then I want to show viewership, then I just do that. But they all work together in a sense. So I feel like you know, it's a mutual relationship, or like family, right?
Definitely. Right now, transcoders get paid in ETH from broadcasters' deposits, and I believe Livepeer Studio accepts dollars. Does Livepeer Studio ever plan to accept crypto for payment?
Yeah, so that was a talk, and I think it's still in the talks. I forgot. It got like really deep and heavy down like a giant rabbit hole of what it means, because we just didn't want to implement um the use of like, oh yeah, we accept, whatever cryptocurrency for a Livepeer account just yet, because there's like, I guess you could spin it other way around, in terms like if they sign on with their wallet, then does that mean like, hey, they hold other information that's maybe related to owning videos, or owning, other information, as to just like, oh, you click and then they could just deposit. I think it was like a lot of um information that we kind of want to think about, and not just do it for the sake of doing it and offering this kind of payment right off the bat. Um, but that's as far as I remember that we it's in the talks still of that. We acknowledge that, but we want to take it like, really think about it before we just offer the common solution of they just deposit cryptocurrency and that's it. So I think it's it turned out, I think that this after discussion was like a lot more involved than just offering that. So
Sure. So
that's
it's not really in the pipeline yet. It's still just a discussion piece, if anything.
yeah, it's still in the in talking of what's the best possible way to implement this feature. I
Sure.
mean, we know it's important, but we just don't want to roll something out just because everyone is, a lot of people are asking for it, and might have to backtrack because of something, and then
Definitely. I got about I got three more questions, and then I'm completely out of questions. So where do you see the most growth going forward?
as for Livepeer,
For adoption of Livepeer, yeah.
um, I feel like it definitely would have to do with this social media, like the decentralized social media aspect, um, as well as just maybe decentralized, video platforms, right? Where if there's more and more of, companies that are coming in and converting over into video into the Web3 realm, then that that's a huge expansion for growth for Livepeer, but also people who are in the Web2 and just wants to convert to Livepeer because of the cost savings. That's like, there's different avenues of, of growth. It's
Definitely.
it's hard to say like, not one specific one, because like if someone just created, some sort of application that utilizes just, video, whether it's live streaming or just, on demand, but it's not social media, but it's, the society adopts to it and likes it, then it gets used that way as well, right? I think the main thing is just getting people to adopt and use this more. And once they're more comfortable with it, I think also people being more familiar with video technology and developing with video technology. I feel like it's still sort of a fine niche, even in the Web 2 world of video technology. But I think maybe this is the opportunity to it becomes more like familiar or more, used a lot more. That's not like standardized, but people are very comfortable with it from all walks of life in terms of developers that then it could push this forward.
There you go. I love it. Um, Second to last question. How did you get the nickname Developer Zero?
So Chung, who's the VP, kind of like decided to dub me that since this is like my first developer role. I'm just learning. I'm a junior developer, and he thought it was a good opportunity as a way to learn is to kind of you know go through all the stuff in Livepeer Studios and building a sample application, finding the ins and outs, what's working, what's not. Whether it's like I'm using it wrong or it's not, there's a bug. So kind of like testing everything out before like releasing it to the world in a sense. So like, it goes through me, like my hands touches it and then, I give my feedback and then it goes out. So yeah.
There you go. Any last questions for Shiyu from the community before I wrap up and ask the one final question? Very good. I usually ask this question to everyone, and I do it more to learn a little bit about you and a little bit about the ecosystem and what things, how things are perceived, because this is a difficult question. And I think people have different opinions on it. So I will ask it because I ask it to everyone. What does Web3 mean to you? What is your definition of Web3?
Yeah, that's a lot of things. I think one of the important things for me in the Web3 ecosystem, I think is important is it's like a very reoccurring theme of I feel like due diligence, and we talk about people being responsible for their own content, but I also think like people are responsible for their own information as well in terms of knowledge, where you have to really do your due diligence and research before you hop on board for, on the latest, like, oh, the next best thing, or just trying to get your foot in the door of understanding what Web3 is, right? Of how to create a wallet. What does that mean? Securing seed phrases, or, hey, I'm used to that. I want to, put my funds in Aave and do like a flash loan or something. What does it entail? What are the risks, right? Or just even being in Discord as we try to tell you know, everybody like watch out for scammers. Like we never ask for your wallet address or DM you first. Kind of like all around like you're responsible for everything, like yourself as, in the Web3 ecosystem as to relying on something like, oh, because it's been around and it works, and just putting like blind faith in something, which I feel like is very important. Um, being in Web3 and the fact of like, like you don't, I think it's a great way to teach financial responsibility too, where, you don't have banks in here where they give you money and then take a loan in a sense, right? Like and gouge you on like the interest fees, where for the most part, it's like if you don't have the funds in your wallet, that transaction never happens. So it kind of teaches people not to spend more than they have. Kind of like that mentality and taking it, a step further with just like learn and read as much as you can and ask around. Like the community is great. Everyone in the space is very welcoming and wanting to help each other out and educate each other about you know, what's going on and what to look out for. So I feel like that's a essential part of, what Web3 means to me of just, I guess it's empowering yourself, but you have to do the work and read and understand everything. there's so many other, benefits from it, like, banking the bankless, right? Where, it helps people at some point, traditionally, if they don't have an address or they're just trying to get their life back or feet on the ground again, but they can't get a job because of all of these, catch 22s of having address before, but you need a bank account to get a job, but all of that stuff. Or even decentralized ID, right, where I allow specific places to have only a certain amount of information and that's it, right? I guess the thing I heard in the very beginning that kind of appealed to me too when I was in the space, getting into the space, was of why, you know, our information, our driver's license, why, like, if I go to, you know, the bar or something, that the doorman needs to know my address. They just need a picture of me and my date of birth, and that's it, right? It's like leaking information or access information that shouldn't be allowed. So I think a multitude of all these things kind of combined is like that. It's trying to, I guess, in a short sense, make the world better for everyone, kind of like on the same playing field.
Very cool. That was a very good explanation of that and a very cool take on it. So I do appreciate all your time and efforts into answering some of these hard questions. I'll wrap it up. Anyone else have any last questions before we sign Shiyu off? Very cool. Shiyu, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate the time taking out of your busy schedule to come do a Q&A. And yeah, we just really, really appreciate you being here.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It was really fun. It was a pleasure. And, of course, everyone knows I'm in the Discord, so feel free to say hi, or if you need help, I will be glad to assist or could point you to the right direction.
Cool.
Thanks,
cool.
you.
Thank you so much. Feel free to stick around for the rest of the water cooler. It's probably going to go on for another 50 minutes or so. We usually try to go for 2 hours, or at least until all the topics are covered. So, yeah. What I'll do is I'll move on to the topics that we quickly went through, and then we'll continue on with the conversation. So I see we do have a couple people that have joined us since, so I'll quickly do introductions of the two new people, and then we'll move on. Mike Z, I see you've joined us. Would you like to introduce yourself on a topic?
Hey guys, Mike Zuper, running Zodap since February. No topics today. It's kind of late, so I'm just poking my head in to see what's going on.
No worries. Great to see you. Okay, I'm gonna try this name. Aramano? Ki Y, something like that. Kai Y. Would you like to introduce yourself on a topic? Or any questions you might have? Oh, there you go. No worries.
Hi.
Oh, there you are.
Hello, guys. I'm not good at English. Sorry, read only today. Sorry.
That's totally fine. Either way, we're just really happy to have you here. So welcome, and great to have you join us.
Yeah, I'm a developer of dApps. We are now developing live streaming based on Livepeer system in Japan. Yeah, and so on. Thank you.
Very cool. That is amazing. So I'm really, really happy to have you in here, and welcome to the community.
I see. Thank you so much.
There we go. Okay, great. Let's move on to the topics. So there were two major themes on topics today. The first being errors. So lots of errors, specifically with the too many files open error and some orchestrator busy errors. And then the other topic that was brought up was this conversation around multiple orchestrators. So let's start with just some errors and some node uptime issues that maybe some of us have been affected by. Me specifically, the too many files open error has brought down my New York node and my Frankfurt node regularly for the last 48 hours, which is quite frustrating. I made a GitHub issue for it. Yeah, so who wants to kick us off with what they think this is and what the solution might be? yeah, not everyone has to jump in at once, but I might pick on someone. Well, let's start with who am I going to pick? Jason, you were the first to bring it up exactly. Oh no, yours was the low bitrate error. Papa Bear left. Okay. Frank, you brought up too many file errors. What have you been seeing? What has been your experience?
I don't know. I just noticed that this error appears maybe 3 days ago and never appears before. And that was not after update Livepeer, so I don't understand why this error just happened like that. Maybe there is something who have changed on the RPC side, on broadcaster sides at some point. I don't know.
Yeah, so I don't know if it would be the RPC side, because that would affect all my nodes, whereas out of 7 of my nodes, only 2 have been having problems. And my 2 nodes are New York and Frankfurt that have been having the most problems. Is that similar for other people? Those areas?
Yeah, I have the same problem on the New York and European node. All nodes are running with Ubuntu. It seems that nodes running on Windows have not the problem. Only Linux. That's all. I don't know why that happened 3 days ago and never before. I don't know.
I have a feeling this is a broadcaster problem.
Yeah,
Maybe. Sorry.
well, I mean, I could speak to some of it, because I know there's like a if you go on like the AR Weave documentation, if anyone's ever looked at that project, there's a help file, like for, AR Weave deals with files and hard drives mostly, and they have like a tweak that they do to maximize the amount of files that can be open at a given time. And that's not to speak to the root cause, but maybe a potential solution. So I've got that modification on my nodes, and I haven't seen any issues. But there's a certain way you can change it. I think like ulimit or something. I did look up the syntax and can post it here, but I think that might fix it. I know that error is usually tied to a setting which is really low on Linux by default.
I have a question. Are you using on a container or native?
Which app? Sorry.
The Orchestrator for this problem.
Yeah, I'm running Orchestrator node, just regular Livepeer, most recent release.
But I mean, are you using Docker for your application or natively on the?
No, I've not been using Docker. No.
Okay.
No, I haven't been using it.
Neither me, yeah.
Because the ulimit on Docker is different
It
from.
has affected.
Yes.
I was going to say, I know that some users that are on Docker have seen it in Docker as well as people just running the binaries. So I don't know what I mean. So I don't think it's specific to one or the other, or that one isn't. Sorry, they're both vulnerable to this. I can just throw this out there. I mean, this is not my idea, but LivePool went down after finally coming back up over the weekend, and it was hit with this. And Nico's just kind of questioned if he thought someone may be probing and flooding the TCP connections on the network. Don't know what that would be coming from, or I don't think it was a Livepeer changing anything, because usually on the weekend they're not usually doing testing and that kind of stuff from what I've seen. But I thought that was an interesting possibility.
That is a very good take at it. I forgot to even consider that, Papa Bear. I was thinking about all the conversation here, but if somebody were to open a TCP connection to your machine and just say, open up 10,000 of them and leave them there without doing anything, not sending any traffic to it or anything, that could potentially fill up file handles. I mean, we'd have to monitor that. I'd have to look and see if that's actually happening, because
I haven't had that problem, and I run in Docker as well, but it's really a host operating system issue. But somebody doing a port scan or flooding packets to your Livepeer endpoint could definitely open up more than normal file handles. So I didn't consider malicious intent.
Yeah, and then he just posted like the commands to check and see like just how many files were open after he restarted, and he said he had 232 open. I don't really know that if that's. He seemed to think that was a lot for just a fresh restart. That was just on Livepeer. But when I checked mine, I was running it like depending on the node, like from I think my range from like 80 to like 500, depending on which node I was checking. And I checked them again this morning, and they were all lower than the values that they were yesterday. So I don't know if that has something to do with the number of streams that were coming in or anything like that as well. But
Well, post
something to
post
think
the
about.
metrics you were using, how you were actually
Sure,
tracking that,
sure,
because that'd be
sure.
useful, I think, for folks that need to know. Because again, if you have an orchestrator down and you can confirm the limit of your file handles is above the limit you set, then that's good information.
We'll post that in the chat right now.
Is there a way to look at file handles by process?
Yeah, that's what I'm actually going to post in here.
I mean, for those who run application firewalls like UFW, you can start to eliminate that crap by, saying, hey, if it's 8935 coming into Livepeer on my node, only allow it for the Livepeer ingest nodes and block everything else. So then those little port scanners that are going on will not be able to run against you. They will just get blocked immediately. So that's a security measure. If you're running like a UFW firewall, you can implement that, and that would also mitigate some of this.
Sure, but if we have public broadcasters, surely you wouldn't want to turn away other broadcasters in that case.
Well, if that's the case, then you should be able to go you should identify the broadcaster IP, but you're right. If it's just somebody pops in, starts broadcasting. But again, that's all done through ETH accounts and deposits and reserves. And you could also, you could at least monitor the traffic initially to see where the IPs are coming from. And then, grant those that you think are not nefarious. Because again, if they're sending a stream, that's fine. Allow that IP. But if they're just opening a connection and leaving, never putting a stream on the wire, then yeah, you probably want to block that list. Maybe you use it for a blacklist. So start building up a blacklist where you can say deny from this IP, deny from that IP. I mean, a variety of ways to combat it.
I've thought for a while about what if we had a web application firewall, there's lots of security built into Livepeer code, but one great way to block stuff like that is to have like an application firewall over top your service URI. But I don't know if anybody's done that. I've never really configured one before. But that'd be interesting.
I've configured web application firewalls. I just caution that, milliseconds matter, right?
Yeah.
So if you start putting these layers on top, you're going to start paying an overhead price. And how much of an overhead will it be before you lose streams? But definitely worth exploring and benchmarking and determining, right? I wouldn't discount it, but I definitely would look at it as a threat-based assessment. If you really are subjected to that, then you should probably consider it. Again, the other part is how much money are you making, and if what's the impact of an outage, right? Like, how much is it going to cost you when your node goes down for 2 hours because of file handles? That could be problematic for some people.
And we don't know if it's malicious, requests that are doing it, but just in general, it sounds like a good idea to explore. There's any
Sounds
type
like a
of
grant,
application.
Elite.
Yeah.
Although there was an article posted that that apparently Eric had already come up with a solution for this, and it's been identified years ago. Did everyone see that link?
I did, but I still think it's odd that that it would just all of a sudden like pop up again when everyone else has been running, without making those changes to so I think there's something to that. And it just seems it just seems weird that you'd have to make this change all of a sudden. I mean, if it was something that had been since the beginning and there were just that many connections and it required it, but
I'll just remember, as Livepeer and Web3 adoption starts to become more visible, folks can look at the service registry. It's publicly addressable, right? If the service registry is publicly addressable, all the Orch DNS or IPs behind it are also accessible. And then you start looking at how much ETH is flowing through the network. That's also accessible. Folks are going to start raising an eyebrow and coming and sniffing for some ETH, some holes in the fort to see where they can go scrape some ETH out.
oh yeah, for sure. I was just really like, what? Yeah, I mean, why did it pop up now? Or sorry, why was it? I guess what in the past when it was something that Eric had posted about, which I see Titan just posted in the chat, to increase the file limit. We've all been running fine without it. So yeah, I mean, if it's a malicious attack, then we certainly need to figure out a way to address that.
Well, again, there's so many variables that have changed. Like if you look at the operating system in terms of file handles, back when we were having all those RPC issues where we were fetching so many blocks per minute, like outbound connections are also considered file handles, right? So like he could have been hitting those limits for other reasons outside of a nefarious actor. It could have been, holy crap, my RPCs, outgoing RPC calls are taking up so many file handles. So the outbound ones could be part of it. And then if you're taking streams as well, it's not impossible for you to hit that 1024 default limit on Linux. So now, again, I would agree you would expect it to see more of it, but it's so unique and specific to the server and the workload at that moment that it's hard to say why one node versus the other would hit it and why others aren't. I would argue if you guys looked at those nodes, you would find those are probably your busiest nodes, or they're under, some serious attack either way.
Yeah, I think they are my busiest nodes. Interesting. Okay, well,
In theory, if you had a lot of traffic come in at once, it could use up a lot of file nodes. We know it writes the segments to the disk as it transcodes.
Right,
From what
but
I've
remember, a segment going to the disk elite is just one file handle, but you're holding a file handle when you open a TCP connection. So at a minimum, when you're doing it, you're going to have two, but again, some of them, if you write to the file system quickly and then it sends it off to the transcoder and deletes the file, right? Like that file handle goes away. So it's a culmination of so many things at a given moment in time.
Yeah, and I've seen like temp files pile up in the LP data folder. It seems like it doesn't always clean them up perfectly, so you might even have a process hanging on to a lot of those files over time, and maybe the Livepeer node needs to be recycled from time to time due to some inefficiencies with that. Just some theories.
Yeah, I've noticed those temp files as well, and that definitely is a smell factor when it comes to is it a code thing? There might be something, but again, for this particular issue to come out of the blue, those temp files have been there, since I've been running Livepeer, right?
Yep.
all right. Well, sounds like we don't know the answer. It sounds like we don't know the problem is, but specifically, I can't figure out a solution because I did the updates that Eric posted, and I rebooted the server, and it didn't update the max files that can be open. Like it's still stuck at 1024. But then I found out you could manually increase it with just a command line. So and it wouldn't last. I guess if you rebooted it, it wouldn't stay that way, but nonetheless, I increased it to 80,000 or something like this, and it still crashed. It still hit the limit.
Take a look at the Arweave documentation. They have like 3 different ways of doing it, and it seems like it for some systems you have to apply it a couple different places. There's like a security setting, a system setting, and a user setting. I think.
Can you link it?
Yeah, I'll look at that.
Right on. Okay, well, errors aside, we can talk about this probably all day and probably in chat, and it's probably best if we just continue this conversation in chat a little bit. But yeah, let's move on to the other topic, which is multiple orchestrators by Pawn. Pawn, do you want to explain your topic a little bit and explain what you're thinking?
Hi again. It's been brought up to our attention that some people are running multiple orchestrators. I think the biggest number we see in it was someone is running 6 orchestrators with different ETH addresses. And by the looks of it, we're just taking spot. It's like been small staked orchestrators, about 200 LPT each. And looking at that, some people can't even get in to try to become orchestrator just because of initial stake amount that has gone through the roof now. So I'm just was wondering, are all guys running 2 orchestrators? I know some people are doing tests and all sorts, but 6 orchestrators are taking the cake, in my opinion.
That's a really good question. I believe Ben with Authority Null had some concerns about this. I don't know, Ben can't talk today, so I won't put any words in his mouth. But then I've also had some Livepeer core people private message me and ask me about my opinion on this subject matter, which I don't know if I have an opinion right now. So does anyone else want to provide their opinion?
Hey, I'll give my personal opinion. Again, it doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things, but the point for me is there's 100 slots, and we see the number from one, as you guys pointed out, 20 LPT, and it slightly rises. Now it's over 100, and there's folks joining the community trying to get in. So I think I don't know if there's a rule to ban people and stop or put limits or, I don't know about any of that stuff. I just think it's kind of like, hey, man, if folks are trying to get in and you got a whole bunch of addresses, maybe it's the right thing to do is to relinquish 1 or 2, especially if you're not getting payouts. You're not, I mean, that's just my thing, but I'm kind of not for like banning and slapping wrists and all that kind of stuff. I don't even know if there's a way to do that, but I just tend to just do the right thing and let everyone play the game, or maybe just banish the 100 limit or something. I don't know, but I feel like it doesn't seem right, and it seems kind of like I don't know what it is. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. You're not going to win more tickets with low stake, more low stakes. Yeah, you might increase your chances some, but in the long run, you're doomed, right? You're not going to make it.
I mean, does that then should that weed itself out if you're trying that and it's not working? Because I mean, it is a permissionless network. So I mean, like you said, I have as much as I question the ethics of it. It's I'm not for putting. I mean, I don't even know how you could put a restriction on it, but I still think that's one of the things. That's one of the downsides of a permissionless network. But we also like the there's a lot of good with it too. So it's I think it's just one of the things we kind of have to live with, unless.
Well, I'll jump in. I'll jump in there for a second. I think the reason people are doing it, especially like 6 orchestrators, is because it works. It's because the selection algorithm, because of the amount of random that's factored in there, these 6 orcs running on one machine that might not even be high performing are getting work and they're getting winning tickets. So ultimately, like, nobody needs to get banned, or it doesn't need to be any policing or anything. But I think looking to the future, there needs to be a change in the selection algorithm. And maybe that 100 orc limit needs to be removed. but that can only be done when the selection algorithm is better.
Yeah, that's a perspective for sure.
No, I'm not saying just policing it or anything. It's just a bit common sense. We had a guy in chat today. He wanted to try out becoming orchestrator. He couldn't because minimum LPT was under 41 LPT. I think it is just to start with, and I think he joined Titan's pool after. I'm not really sure. So just them wallets. I looked at them. They are winning tickets, all of them. So that selection algorithm sending 20% random streams everywhere. So it hits them wallets. So he has more chance of winning it. So basically, using one machine and having 6 orchestrators multiplies the chances of winning a ticket.
It does seem like the selection algorithm could use some tweaking, just in general, but maybe that's something to consider when in the tweaking to I don't know, maybe also check the DNS or IP address that it's going to, or part of the in part of the selection, and if it's coming up with the same IP addresses, or maybe those should be considered as one.
Well, it's gonna be hard, Papa Bear, right? Like if you're geolocated, you got multiple nodes behind multiple IPs and DNS, right? Like you still are under one org, right? Like that's the thing. It's one ETH address. It's not the IPs that are a concern, right? You want more than one IP if you're running a fleet of servers. It's just the, like Pan was saying, one server with 6 ETH addresses running on the same server, like that just, I don't know, it's kind of defeating. That's gaming the system is what it really is.
It just don't get me wrong. I started my own second orchestrator for a week. I felt guilty because I pushed someone out, and I saw the guy complaining, "Oh, I got pushed out," and I was like, "Ah, damn it! I need to shoot it down just because I feel guilty now."
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I think we also talked about this like in the governance channel like a while long ago. It was like really long time ago, but we talked about this like what if one of the big orchestrators just has like multiple like 10, 20 runs 10, 20 orchestrators and just kicks like ton of like small orchestrator out. What can we do about it? I think we had like a really long conversation that didn't go anywhere other than just like, yeah, we could have a little bit of like delegators having like awareness so that like they can delegate more fairly and stuff. But yeah, I think that we're seeing the same problem we're talking about.
Yeah, it's more or less the same topic basically. We had a chat exactly the same. If someone comes in with enough LPT, it can just basically push us all out. Well, most of us out.
Yeah, it's more about like how the incentives are set up, right? So even for me, it would make more sense to like split up and run multiple orchestrators due to this 20% rule, and that's basically what this one guy is doing, right? Is using it to get essentially more traffic to his node, and in a permissionless system, it's just like there's no other way to get around this, right? Even if you like say you can only use one IP, you can game that, right? You can use proxies and stuff, and the only way that I can see is get rid of the 20% rule. But then again, it's worse for newcomers to get like any kind of work, right? So it's always going to be a trade-off, and I think we just need to see if more people start gaming the system, and then we might need to do some kind of change.
Yeah, because I
I
mean,
agree with that.
that 20%, because you know what, I think when there, I don't know if there was always randomness included in the selection process, but I know when I first started like being a small, having almost no stake, it was really hard to get work and it was frustrating. And I think for a lot of people, they just even ended up probably leaving after a while. So it's tough. it's tough to really figure out a solution on this one.
Arbitrum days, though. I think stake didn't move, right? Pre-Arbitrum. Now stake can move freely without getting knocked in the head and taking a serious loss as a staker, right? You can move stake a lot cheaper. So I think the game's a little different today than it was, 6-8 months ago in terms of the stake and the 20% rule. I mean, believe me, when I started out, there was the 20% rule. So if I didn't have that, I don't know if I would still be here. So you know what I mean? I think it's valuable to keep it attractive for newcomers, but at the same time, someone's gaming the system.
The thing is, like, there is an incentive to do that, but maybe we could, like, as a community, find a disincentive to make like a multiple nodes. Is like if there was like I don't know, like this is just a rough